The summer initiation season in the Eastern Cape has recorded fewer victims this year. This also comes as the Govan Mbeki cluster ward councillors have taken 32 young men from communities in the area to a safer school. Siphosethu Booi is standing by to speak to a medical doctor in terms of a holistic approach to initiation. Siphosethu, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Dudu, and like you mentioned correctly, that of course the Govan Mbeki cluster of wards here in Nelson Mandela Bay has taken 32 young people who come from disadvantaged backgrounds of KwaZakhele as well as New Brighton to initiation. Now, earlier on, we were at a family home where we spoke to Mama Miranda, who just detailed at least half of the traumatic experiences that his nephew faced with regards to the issue of not taking the journey to manhood at an earlier stage of his life, as he was of course 30, or rather is 30 years old. So that complete ceremony where all the 32 of course young men will be celebrating Umkidiwabo will be happening soon, and we will of course be alerted and rather sent a media statement to tell us when that will be happening. But one of the most crucial points to do that the majority of the parents in the Eastern Cape, as far as making sure that these young men do take medical tests just before they undergo their journey to manhood, is one of the most critical points. And also it has divided of course the Xhosa nation as far as making sure that these young people go to see doctors just before they go to initiation to check if everything is well and good. Now, to speak to us further and to also just explain the importance of why this is important is of course Dr. Mthembeni Tebelele. We are at his surgery, and he's just going to talk to us in terms of the importance, Doctor, like I mentioned, of the importance of making sure that these young men do come in to see you to check if everything is well and good just before they undertake or undergo the initiation season school and just going there. Please talk to us about the importance and also why this is important, Doc.
Good day, Siphosethu, and good afternoon to all your viewers. It is very, very, very critical and critically important, especially in the Eastern Cape province, to make sure that all the initiates, that is all boys who are prepared to go to initiation school, they do medical checkups, because we are faced with deaths of initiates. Fit young men who we lose almost every season due to complications that some of them you can pick up before they go. And those that are on treatment, we make sure that they continue taking treatment even in the bush. The main problem they face is stigma and discrimination. When they end up in hospital or when they end up with complications, it's like they are not men enough. So we need to make sure that there is proper integration, irrespective of the end result, to make sure that people raise hands when they are unhealthy. We are faced with deaths. To prevent deaths, we need to look back at the statistics. Last year we lost 44 boys. Currently we've lost about 11. And the complications are revolving around septicemia or septic shock, gangrene, gangrenous wounds, dehydration, and so on. Those are things that can be prevented if we work hand in hand as medical practitioners or the health establishments with government. So it's important for boys to stick to the law. Go for screening. We check HIV. We check if they don't have warts, which are the problems we pick. We check the penis. We see if where is the urethra? Is it in the right place? There are conditions called epispadias, hypospadias. That is when the urethra is looking up or looking down. You can't just go and circumcise that person. Are you able to retract the foreskin freely or so for proper inspection? So all those things need to be checked. And then if a boy has got a condition called phimosis, for example, which is where you are unable to retract the foreskin because it's got a small hole at the front, you can't just go and say that boy must go and be circumcised by a traditional surgeon. That is an indication for medical circumcision. And you need to negotiate and explain to the parents that this is why this boy is unfit to go that route. There are kids who are diabetic, for example, type 1 diabetic, who are on insulin. They're injecting 2 types of insulins. They can easily go low on sugar. They can easily go high. So sugar is to be managed. So if you send this guy to the bush, you are likely to encounter complications of which there will be no medical personnel there. Then you are creating a crisis. So those are boys who need to assess properly to make sure are they in good control of sugar, can they stand the conditions in the forest. If not, then the doctor will tell you that this boy cannot stand the conditions in the forest, we better do the circumcision here, and then we make them pass through the traditional route, having dealt with the foreskin already. There are boys with a condition, a bleeding disorder called hemophilia. Hemophiliacs, they cannot stand the conditions in the forest because they need to get factor 8 injected on them on a frequent basis. So there must be a medical personnel involved to make sure that they don't bleed to death. So such few examples are just there to emanate and tell you that there are boys that we can tell you that they won't be fit to go through the traditional route. They must go through the medical route. And some of them, even as early as 2 years of age, the condition of phimosis, and especially around age 8, they like having a complication called paraphimosis, where they forcefully retract the penis, and then it gets tighter around the head of the penis, then it swells up and so on. That's a medical emergency. If the doctor fails to reduce that paraphimosis, that's an indicator for medical circumcision also. The parents must just give consent. So all those that we chop at an early age, it means the parents must prepare themselves so that when they reach the actual age for circumcision, they go through the normal route, but there's no reason to chop the foreskin because it's already dealt with, but they just do the procedure and pass them through the traditional ceremony. That is the issue. So all I'm trying to say, manhood is not around the foreskin. We should not put much weight on the foreskin. That is why people are failing to raise their hands when they face complications. They think if they end up in hospital, there'll be less of men. A man is in the brain, not in the foreskin. Then we can prevent the deaths.
Dr. Tabelele, there are many reports also. I mean, we are Amaxhosa, for starters, and this is quite a sensitive topic, and also, most importantly, it's very important that these reports and also the information that you just gave to me is important to be let out there for the community to know, these young men as well as their families. How is then this also working hand in hand, also preserving isidima and also the respect to the process when medical doctors are also involved? Because I do recall many, back in the days, this was not allowed. How do then this now work hand in hand medically and also traditionally with Abadabadala and making sure that the whole process is done ngendlela nesizotha?
Thank you so much, Sethu. That's a very critical, important question, and if we can face it, it can go a long way to solve a lot of problems. Doctors are produced by the same people. The province has spent a lot of money, about 270,000 to produce one doctor per annum. So count that times 6 years to produce a doctor. Then this is someone who understands the foreskin, the veins, the arteries, the nerves, and everything about the foreskin. And then when these people they come back, you cannot say you are not going to accept them or allow them to come any closer to circumcision or initiation, especially noting that this is a health problem. There's a slogan that they use, they say, "Mabahambe bephila, babuye bephila." It means that the theme is a health topic. This is the health theme, so we need health professionals to become involved who can recognize when a boy has got dehydration. There are signs of dehydration where someone is running dry. You check skin tagger, you check capillary refill time. Traditional people are not trained on those things. Doctors are trained. These guys, when they hit septicemia doesn't come, boom, all of a sudden. It gives you notice. You have a rise in temperature. Doctors have got a thermometer. They can even check temperature and then decide on time. Don't let people die of dehydration. Don't let people die of septicemia, because a doctor is well educated and trained on recognition of this thing. Also, wound care. Wound care, when a wound is septic, it doesn't happen in a day. It's a process. It's a process, so a doctor will pick up, no, this thing is getting gangrenous now. This is not only septic wound, but also there's an area of gangrene. Any area of gangrene means that area will have to be chopped. That is why we are producing a lot of boys who have lost their manhood. Is it better to use doctors to prevent all these things, or to allow people to lose their manhood and die of suicide because they cannot live with the fact that they've lost their penises? Is it better to discriminate and chase doctors away from initiation schools and live with the statistics, which are not statistics, it's actually the number of people that die every year on things that doctors can pick up on time and refer? The great thing to do would be to speak to the people who have already passed to manhood, the young men, abafana basebekhona, and tell them, irrespective of what happens to initiate, when they end up in hospital or they end up with a doctor due to complications, do not discriminate against them. Manhood is in the brain. A real man would not actually insult or discriminate against a boy who ended up in hospital because of a medical problem. If you've got a high blood sugar and you're in the forest, you need to be brought in hospital for rehydration, to get insulin and be managed properly to prevent death. And if you are an epileptic, you are on treatment, you throw a fit in the initiation school, there's no way that can be managed. They will need to be taken up and go to hospital. But these boys resist to go to hospital because of what is happening in society. Discrimination, they will be given funny names and so on as if they are not men enough. But doctors, we are Xhosa doctors, by the way. We are Xhosa doctors. I grew up in Transkei. I went through the traditional route, but now I'm chopping people the Western way. Infection control, we're giving people tetanus and everything, just like all other doctors are doing. But it is much, much safer because we're into saving souls. Our aim is not to belittle the custom or the tradition. We are custodians of the custom. We are trained in the tradition. We respect everything. But let us do rounds and make sure that these boys are healthy and fine, and we save them day in, day out. We can seriously reduce the number of people who die out of complications of circumcision. So this thing of chasing doctors away or stigma against doctors are people. We are men. We are Xhosa men, for that matter, to take it further.
Dr. Tabelele, I think my last question then would be, how has it been received, of course, by the House of Traditional Leaders, and also hand in hand with these young boys who are now going to be undertaking or undergoing the journey of Ukbababe Ngamadod? How is the work between Ninani Ngogqirha, including Otatabadala, as well as the initiates who are now going to undergo the system? Has things changed?
Thank you, Siphosethu. There is legal progress. Government is trying on its side. But I think the main problem is that traditional leaders need to go down to the level of headmen and so on and call imbizos of the young men who are already circumcised and try and destigmatize this issue. So there's a lot that is needed on the traditional side of things. You can design law after law, but to solve a health problem, you need health professionals. And the most important thing is this stigma and discrimination of people who actually fail to pass the traditional route and end up in hospital. That needs to be dealt with so that people are able to raise hands when things are not going well. When it comes to doctors, accepting doctors, the traditional or the law accepting doctors to interfere with the I think we've gone a long way. All these boys now, they start off by going to a doctor for screening. We've got forms that we use for screening to make sure that it is a doctor who declares a boy fit to go to circumcision or not. Unfortunately, some parents don't take kindly to this thing. When we declare a boy unfit for circumcision, we say this boy needs to go for medical circumcision, not the traditional route. He won't make it. Some parents go against that, and then we lose, like it has happened in Tanzania, and it can happen elsewhere. So parents must understand that when you go to a doctor, you're not just going to fill a form, but you are going for a declaration, examination, and tests when necessary, and then a doctor will determine and tell you that this boy can or cannot be prepared to accept whatever result, and then we prepare the boy mentally. That not this year. For example, if someone is HIV positive, he's got a Sipho count of 100, there's no way we can declare that boy fit to go to the forest. We first need to work on the HIV aspect and make sure that the Sipho count is stable for him to stand the procedure that is going to be done. So there needs to be a lot of work. It's not where it is supposed to be, but there is an effort.
Thank you very much. That was, of course, Dr. Mthembeni Tabelele. Thank you very much for your time. And Dudu, I believe he touched on many aspects when one actually undertakes, or rather young men in the Eastern Cape and other provinces undergo the journey to manhood. So a lot of work still needs to be done from the traditional house, of course, and medical doctors, including parents, as well as initiates, to try and curb, of course, the rising numbers of initiates dying during the season of initiation here in the Eastern Cape.
Siphosethu, Booi, thank you very much for that report. Still